Did you try to remove something from your wall but ended up tearing the drywall? If that's the case, don't panic. I'm going to show you a real simple way how you can fix that and make it look like nothing ever happened. Now, in order to fix this properly, we're going to have to remove all of the loose paper first. I'll use a spackle knife to get rid of most of it, and then I'll come back with a sanding sponge just to get rid of all the little loose paper. Now you want to pay close attention to the edge. You see how this paper is lifting right here? This is what we're trying to get rid of. So go around the edges, see if you can find little loose paper like this, and if you do, take a blade, make a small cut behind it, see if it's still peeling off. If it's still peeling off, make another cut until you get it to where it's not coming loose anymore. Now before I start the next step, which is priming, I'll go ahead and use a sanding sponge just to get rid of all the debris and make sure that those edges are nice and smooth. Now this is the magic stuff right here. This is called a problem surface primer. It's basically a water-based primer, and you can compare it to Elmer's glue. So what we're going to do is we're going to glue everything in place so that later on when we come back and spackle everything, nothing's going to bubble or chip on us. Now what I like about this primer, it's really easy to use. It's water-based, so it's really easy to clean up too, just with some soap and water. Now I'm going to leave a link to the product in the description, but we're just going to go ahead and use a mini roller to cover all of the surfaces. And again, we're just sealing the surface and gluing everything in place, because if you were to spackle right over this, or if you were to paint right over this, that brown paper is going to bubble up and tear even more. Now when you're applying this, don't worry about what direction you're going, but you want to pay attention to make sure that you're hitting all of the edges and that you're covering everything. Now as you're finishing up though, you want to make sure that your last stroke is always in the same direction. Now whether that's up and down, left and right, or diagonally, doesn't matter as long as the last stroke is always in the same direction. Now the primer has a white tint, but when it's dry, it dries to a clear film. So if you take a close look and if you see that there's no white spots left and you have this shiny, reflective, clear finish, that's when you know it's fully dried. When you touch it, you'll notice that it's a little bit sticky. Again, it's kind of like glue, so that's normal. Don't worry about that. If we come over here and look at the edge, you see what I mean? We glued everything into place, so now if we work on it, we don't have to worry about it lifting off or bubbling again. Before I go ahead and spackle this, I'm going to use a sanding sponge just to knock off all of the debris, just to make sure that we get a nice, smooth, even finish. Since this is not too bad, I'm going to start this off with a skim coat. I'm just using a lightweight spackle, and as you can see, I'm not doing a heavy coat, just a nice little skim coat to try to even out as much as I can. And I'm probably going to end up doing this like 2 or 3 times till I get it to where I'm happy with it. After the final coat dries, I'll go ahead and use a sanding sponge again to sand everything nice and smooth. Again, this is so you get the best finish possible, and once you put on your final coat, you have a nice, smooth, even finish. Now keep in mind that whenever you're spackling something, you want to seal and prime the surface. You don't want to go ahead and just paint over this because the paint is just going to peel off. I'm just using a regular multi-purpose primer to get the surface ready and to make sure that we have a nice bond between our surface and our final paint coat. Now you see how easy that was? I have no doubt in my mind that you can do this too. Now before you go ahead and paint this, always check your surface first. You can see here I have a little bit of debris in here, probably some lint from the roller, but I'm just going to go ahead and lightly scuff sand it with my sanding sponge, and that'll make sure that you get a nice smooth finish when you go ahead and paint this. Now if you look close, you can still see some of the brown paper bleeding through. That's absolutely normal. If you see this, don't panic. That's just because the primer is a little bit translucent, but once you cover this with paint, all of this will be gone.